Welcome back to Depraved and Debaucherous. We're talking about gaslighting and insulting and the difference between the two. So gaslighting, sometimes a disagreement is just a disagreement. So it's a psychological manipulation that undermines the reality of the gaslight, causing them to question their reality of sense or self. The need to control, the act of manipulation, and a power dynamic are all components of gaslighting. To stop the gaslighting dynamic, opt out of the power struggle with phrases like, we're going to have to agree to disagree. And then with insults, the usual responses to an insult, anger and returning the insult are the weakest ones. That when you are dealing with people insulting you, and they're just putting you down without making you question yourself, which is what gaslighting does, is we need to be able to laugh about it, or better still, ignore the insult. And offense exists not in the insult, but in our reaction to it. And our reactions are completely within our control. So that's the other part, is the way we react to being insulted or being gaslit. But the point is with gaslighting is to create and guarantee there is a reaction. That's what the person's hoping for. If they know they're going to insult you and they think, well, what I'm going to say is not going to be enough, it's not going to create the effect that I want, the desired effect, then you gaslight them. You make sure you not only insult them, but you also put them down and make them feel insecure or make them feel something about themselves to trigger a response. So now, in this story from Psychology Today, that maybe you're supporting your friend being gaslit by their partner, or you quit your job because your supervisor's constant criticism left you questioning your skills. So there was a book back in 2007 called The Gaslight Effect that popularized the term and helped people in emotionally unhealthy and manipulative relationships name what was happening to them. But we now know that that's actually been a lot when it comes to political campaigns. And when we hear about that during election time, we always hear about gaslighting. So this psychologist, Robin Stern, who writes about power and relationships for Psychology Today, talks about the fact that it's starting to lose meaning. And when she's told that someone gaslighted them and when in fact they were just merely disagreeing. And so gaslighting can happen between two people in any relationship. A gaslighter preserves his or her sense of self and power over the gaslightee, who adopts the gaslighter's version of reality over their own. Because they're also not based on reality when they make a comment or an insult, because it's not based in truth. And that's where some people can do gaslighting, because then you believe what is being said about yourself by the person gaslighting you. Now, they go into a story and they talk about the fact that conflicts can veer into gaslighting if one person is so insistent that the other person starts to doubt themselves. And a power imbalance in a relationship usually allows the gaslighter to undermine the other person's sense of self. The need to control, the act of manipulating, and the leverage of power are essential components of gaslighting, not hurt feelings or challenge viewpoints. And then the insult side, they talk about the fact that how you handle yourself is really what it comes down to, in the same way with gaslighting. Be able to go ahead and not let yourself being felt offended and then being triggered in the same case. So in the story, they talk here about stoicism, timeless advice for coping with insults. And I think with gaslighting also implies the same thing. There's Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, and was also succeeded by his longtime student Cleanthes of Assos. So here's what they talk about when it comes to being dealt with insults and put downs. You first need to ascertain the insult truly is an insult. So whether the substance is true, whom it came from, and why the substance is true or conceivably true. But remember, because with gaslighting, it's not based on truth. When you're going to get put down in a certain way, but they also want to make sure that they tell you something that is not true. Okay, put it like this. You're fat. You're ugly. Insults. If you're getting gaslit, it's like, well, nobody's ever going to want to be with you. No one loves you. No one even wants to be around you, right? I'll tell you like this. what was a great example of gaslighting not too long ago? Remember the movie Joe Dirt? God, that's an old reference, but hey, listen, Kid Rock playing the bully with Joe Dirt being played by David Spade, and remembering the insults that are being put out by Kid Rock to put down Joe Dirt and to make him believe what he was being told is true. That's kind of the same scenario. And you tell me, I think that's exactly what I think it is. It's an interesting subject. And we take offense at our parents or teachers whom we know have our best interests at heart. If we respect the person that insults us, we ought to give careful thought to their remarks and learn as much as we can from them. If we believe the person to be beneath our consideration, we have no reason to take offense, right? So if it's not based on truth, then you got to ignore it. You got to just blow it off as much as you can. I don't know what you do, but you could just say, okay, whatever, or just blow it off and not even think about it and just go along. The other thing, too, is very important, and this is especially for guys, checking your anger when you're getting insulted, because then you're going to let off some energy that might be considered kind of feminine and very easy to get yourself angry when you need to be able to go and not let yourself get angry. It's the weakest possible response for 3 reasons. If we take the insult, therefore the insulter seriously, there might be substance to the insult, number 1. It upsets and destabilizes us, and then becomes unpleasant, inviting further attacks. So it's the same thing that happens when you are being bullied in high school or being bullied in elementary school, is that the insult or the gaslighting, if it's not based on anything, and people could just put you down, and you take heart to it, you take umbrage to it, and you believe what they're saying to you, maybe because some other people might just repeat the same thing because they're just following along with somebody else and just being a gopher and just saying something that, to be cool, you're going to say the same insult that this other person said because you want to get along with them. And some people do that for the wrong reasons. Just keep in mind that some things like that happen. That you should check your impulse. That sometimes the impulse that may or may not go with anger is to return the insult. And there are some dangers with returning that insult. That if we're going to insult back, it has to be clever and cutting, or at least apt, and at least has to do the same effect back around. You got the boomerang effect. Plus, you need to find things to laugh about. And if you're able to go and say something smart or snarky to kind of throw back at the insult to get a laugh, that might be the best way to neutralize an insult, but that's not something you're going to always be able to come up with all the time. Plus, if you go ahead and respond to the insult, something could happen to trigger that person because they might be easily offended or triggered. And then you are doing the same thing that person did, and you're just playing at their level. Is that a good idea or not? But in this story, they say it's better to ignore the insult. It's much easier to simply ignore it. So when you're thinking about it yourself, about being insulted, you just basically say to yourself, you're so insignificant to me that I don't even care to register your apology, let alone take your offense at your insult. So it's a pretty simple lesson. A lot of people can figure this out, but I thought it would be interesting to go ahead and bring up here on the program. And that's what I have for you on this installment of Depraved and Debaucherous.